And hello, everybody. This is Tony Felker and Chris Lee again. Welcome back to Conversations with the Chamber, as we are here trying to work through this crisis and bring more information to all of you on some of the topics that you're probably looking at as you're evaluating how to deal with your business, whether it's challenges, opportunities. I think the more information that we can bring to you, the better. Not to mention, Chris, we've been working on learning new social media platforms and how to do virtual meetings, and we'll touch a little bit about that later in this chat as far as some of the changes that we're looking to doing. But any updates on your end, Chris, as we tend to try to update everybody, this being Wednesday, April 1st today?
Yeah, absolutely. So just this morning, the Frisco ISD moved their school board elections to the next scheduled general election. Essentially, all that means is they moved them to November, barring any action from the governor's office. So there's the potential that down the road, the governor's office will call a special election before November for local municipalities and school boards who decide to do elections. We haven't seen anything on that just yet, but just wanted to put that bug out there that the school board elections have been moved to November. Earlier this past week, Friday, the city also moved their elections to November. So just a little bit of election news for everybody if you're watching this on April 1st. And other than that, we're digging in. Like I said in previous videos, there's a lot of information we're trying to disseminate. So we're working on blog posts, we're working on other social media outlets. Today is also Census Day. So if you haven't already done your census and you're watching this on April 1st or before the deadline for the census, please go ahead and fill out your census.
I did mine earlier today. So
Perfect. So in the mail, you'll receive a letter with some information. You can fill it out and mail it back, or go online with the code that they provide and do it all right there for you. So census is really quick and easy. I did mine last week, even before the census kicked off. So those are the quick updates I have for anybody who's watching this on April 1st or shortly thereafter. And yeah, with that, I'll turn back over and you can do the introduction of our guest.
very good. And obviously yesterday, the governor issued the statewide declaration. So basically, whether you want to call that a shelter in place, stay at home, essential workers only, however you want to dictate it, but basically the entire state. I think that now puts us at close to 40 or 41 states that are under that and going
Correct.
from there. So, and obviously last week on Friday signed into bill was the new $2 trillion plus stimulus bill that included a lot of options for businesses to look at. The whole point of a lot of these conversations with the chamber that we're trying to do is educate people on different tools that may be out there, how they apply to their particular situation, their business, as they're making decisions on payroll, salary, loans, grants, how to survive this and get through this crisis, and then be as poised as possible for a quick recovery. Today, we have with us Mr. Jason Freeman with Freeman Law Group. But don't let that scare you, because he's not just an attorney, he's also a CPA. So Jason, if you would you just give us a little bit of a background in terms of all that you do, your firm, as well as you hold some other state offices or state positions right now. Give us a little bit of a background as to what you're all about, sir.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that, Tony and Chris, and I'm glad to join you guys today. Yeah, my firm is Frisco based. I'm a resident up here in Frisco as well. We have a practice or a group that has a kind of a background typically in tax and financial matters and financial litigation, tax litigation. And so I happen to teach tax law at SMU's law school as an adjunct professor, and I'm actually the incoming chairman-elect of the Texas Society of CPAs.
So perfect timing for you to take over that position, right? With nothing going on in the industry.
Nothing at all. These are definitely interesting times, Tony. You know, Friday, I guess, the Congress enacted the Coronavirus Aid and Economic Security Act, or the CARES Act, as it's been dubbed. And again, that was on March 27th, and it was about an 880-page act, and followed another slightly smaller congressional act. But it was unanimously passed in the Senate, 96 to nothing, and it was passed by voice vote in the House. And as you mentioned, it's a $2 trillion coronavirus relief package that provides financial assistance to small businesses and taxpayers through a number of mechanisms. And we're obviously not going to cover all of them on this short video segment, but I do want to give you some of the highlights or high points from the legislation, and then point out that we'll be following this up with a much more in-depth webinar so that we can continue to get some more information out to our viewers. I will tell you the one thing that really jumped out to me after reading the bill, and I've now read it several times.
Wait a minute, Ben. Wait a minute. Now, Chris had said he hadn't read the whole thing. You've actually read the entire bill?
I have been through it. I have.
Hey, I'm going to give you credit on that one. It's a little too dry for my liking, but I'll leave the literary greats in Congress to have you digest that.
You know, it is a fine piece of congressional literary work in my circles. I have the benefit of reading legislation for a living, so it's a little bit easier on me. It's a lot to digest, and frankly, to digest it quickly requires having some background knowledge about some of the things that are referenced within there. So it's a challenging undertaking. But I can tell you the one thing that really jumped out to me more than anything was the new SBA, one of the new SBA loan programs known as the Paycheck Protection Program. And frankly, I really wanted to get the word out about this program to our to our businesses and residents in Frisco, because this is one of those provisions that has the ability to really inject some liquidity and cash into businesses that need it right now. It's a new loan program that's going to be administered through the SBA. The bill actually authorized $349 billion of funding to be guaranteed by the SBA. And it's designed, it goes by the acronym of PPP. It's designed to provide loans of up to $10 million to qualifying small businesses. Really, the whole purpose here is to encourage employee retention during this crisis.
Small business, it's actually 500 employees and less, right? So it's actually, depending on what your definition of small business, it could be small to medium, good size, 500 employees and less, correct?
Absolutely. So here's what you need to know about it. It's generally available to businesses, including nonprofits, with no more than 500 employees. Now, there are some narrow exceptions to that, but that is generally the rule here. It's available to sole proprietors, independent contractors, and self-employed people. The loan is essentially limited, the amount is essentially limited to 2.5 times the average payroll during a particular look-back period. So there's some fine print there, but that's the basic idea. It can be used for payroll costs, group health care benefits, interest on certain mortgage obligations and other debts, and rent and utilities. It is on a non-recourse basis, no personal guarantees or collateral. The interest rate cannot exceed 4%. There are payment deferral provisions, no prepayment penalties. SBA has waived fees and has also waived the normal requirement that there be an inability to get credit elsewhere. The capstone on this is the forgiveness provision. So in this sense, it functions more like a grant than a loan. To the extent that amounts received from the loan are paid during the 8-week period following the loan on certain qualified categories. And those include payroll costs, certain mortgage interest, rent, and utilities. So to the extent it is paid for those items during that 8-week period, the loan will be forgiven. And I'll tell you, as a tax lawyer, when I hear loan forgiven, the flip side of that is usually, well, that's actually a taxable event as far as the IRS is concerned. Well, this act actually specifically accepts the loan forgiveness from being treated as gross income. So it's not a taxable event if the loan is forgiven here. So that is, that's one of the things that I think, I really want our residents and our businesses to be aware of and to be looking into. And keep in mind, it's designed to encourage employee retention. So there are some limitations on forgiveness of the loan, particularly where there may be reductions in workforce or reductions in salaries.
Right. As I understand it, it's, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, if you maintain at least 75% of your payroll, average payroll prior to the loan, and that includes if you've let people go, but you bring them back, correct?
There are provisions for bringing them back. So as far as the reductions, my reading of the statute currently is that it's really more on an employee by an employee basis in terms of the percentage. But yes, it allows for a reduction of up to 25% of the salaries. And then in terms of the reduction in workforce, there's actually a formula that I'm deliberately avoiding getting our viewers bogged down into, but it essentially compares your number of employees or your employment level during that period of the loan with what it looked like before, trying to gauge whether there's been a reduction in the workforce.
Right. Now, Chris, we had talked about this, and we've talked about some different aspects of this in some of the other conversations we've had, but we've got the individual payments, you've got the payroll protection program, and then there's another third primary component of the stimulus bill. Is that correct?
The economic injury disaster loans, is that what you're referring to? Because there's a lot of different aspects to this. I don't even want to break it down into three. I think there's probably closer to 30. But there's quite a bit going on. So there's other opportunities for sure.
So let me ask you guys both this. I mean, obviously, if an organization is sitting around with plenty of cash, I would say you wouldn't take out a loan, but it is a forgivable loan. Why would somebody not take advantage of this? Or are there times that you wouldn't recommend it? Or it's almost like, why not do it? I don't want to say free money because obviously there's nothing free involved in here and there's still a lot of change going on. But Jason, what would be the downsides to utilizing this if somebody not wanting to use this?
So I think free money may be the first time that's been an apt descriptor for a government program. Now, I will say, and it's a good question, there are actually some catches, I guess. There are several tax credits that have been enacted as part of the CARES Act. And to the extent that a taxpayer receives forgiveness, receives a loan under the PPP program or forgiveness, there may be limitations on the ability to take those tax credits. They're typically payroll related tax credits and deferral of payroll taxes. So that might be an answer, but I can tell you, I think in almost every scenario that I have been able to conceive of at this point, the PPP program and forgiveness of the loan makes a whole lot of sense. Definitely in terms of a short-term, cash infusion.
Very good, and that's what we're always talking about here. So, Chris.
So, Jason, if I was a small business and I'm sitting here looking at this, listening to this conversation, and just kind of being overwhelmed by all of this, and I don't know kind of where to go, what would you recommend to a small business to move forward through some of this to understand more in depth? I mean, I'm not one to understand the formulas and how that applies to my business necessarily, but how would you recommend small businesses or businesses in general move forward with some of this information?
Well, I think certainly on a forum like this, about the best I can do is get the information out that these programs are out there so that businesses can be aware of them and start working them into their forecasts and their plans. What I can tell you is I think the short answer to that is people are going to have to be consulting with, on the tax side with their tax professionals and working through the details of these. But I can tell you, I'm having these conversations kind of all day, every day right now. I mean, I can tell you last night, conversations with executives at multiple clients of mine kind of through the evening, talking through, well, look, we've made a pass through this legislation, and let's start modeling our projections and how we can work these in to salvage ourselves or take advantage, and really kind of view some of this as, in some respects, as an opportunity. So I think that's where, I think that's what you have to do, is you just got to get your professionals in there, and make them a part of the team. There's really never been more of a time that I think that's necessary. And so your CPAs, your lawyers, they need to take the mindset of they are part and parcel of the team, and they're there to get the job done and figure out what needs to be done to keep business moving. While we're on those topics, I do think one of the other things that we should talk about is what the IRS is doing right now generally. Because I can tell you, I'm getting a lot of calls on that as well. A lot of people with tax debt or businesses with tax debt who are probably more concerned than ever about the status on that. In some ways, we kind of have some good news from the IRS. So the first thing I'll say that people really need to be aware of, the IRS has automatically extended the due date for tax returns and tax payments that were due on April 15th. So those have all been extended automatically to July 15th. So taxpayers don't have to do anything to get that extension. And this includes estimated taxes that were due on April 15th. The IRS has also implemented what it is called a People First initiative. So some of the highlights here, taxpayers who may be in installment agreements with the IRS. The IRS is allowing for deferrals of those payments. So get with your professional, get with the IRS, make them aware, but you can defer those payments. Offers in compromise, that's a tax settlement with the IRS. Same exact thing, where those have been granted, they're deferring payments. I will tell you, as a side note, this is probably the best time in decades to try to settle a debt with the IRS, the way their program and system works. So, for some taxpayers, take advantage of that. Collection activities from the IRS, liens and levies, they're generally being stayed right now, outside of some sort of egregious scenarios, or where there are taxpayers with high wealth taxpayers, they're still continuing their audits are generally not being started. They're not doing any of this in person. You can't go to an IRS office in person right now, but the IRS is still working. They're still working remotely. I'm having conversations with someone in some department there 3, 4, 5 times a day. So I can tell you they're still working, but they're going through the same challenges in a lot of ways that all the rest of us are. And the last thing I'll make a note of on that is be aware more than ever of scams. I am coming across them more than ever, and there are a number of scams out there that are just unfortunately taking advantage of the situation and preying on people's vulnerabilities.
Yep. It's a great point. So one of the things that I'm noticing, and Chris, back me up or challenge me on this, but on the different conversations that we've had, we've got this saying out there, we're all in this together, alone together, alone. But it almost sounds like more than ever, working with your CPAs, working with your professionals, working with your attorneys, this is not the time to try to save a few dollars to say, I don't need that professional advice. I think it sounds more than ever, this is absolutely the time to make certain that you've got somebody who understands the issues, understands your organization, your particular situation, and can give you the best advice to not only save you money, but hopefully, as you alluded to, put yourself into a situation where you truly have an opportunity to better yourself perhaps through all of this crisis. Is that not the case?
Yeah, no, I would echo you fully. I think that's one of the things that I've heard ad nauseum through all of these different conversations we've had, is that if you're in a tight spot, you don't necessarily know where to go, find somebody that you find as a trusted professional, and as a tax lawyer, as an HR lawyer, as a CPA, whatever it may be, find that person and work with them. I mean, one thing that I've learned in my time here at the Frisco Chamber, it's only been a short time, it feels a lot longer, but it's only been a short time since January. And one of the things that I think is truly amazing about Frisco is that everybody works together. There's a partnership everywhere. And I think this is a better time than ever to find some of those people to build those partnerships and grow your business, and potentially could be the one thing that makes your business survive all of this, is finding that person that you trust and working with them. And if it puts you in a potentially uncomfortable situation, you got to look at it long term and say, if I go through this short term uncomfortable situation, there might be a long term gain here, and my business, my employees might be able to be here in a few months. Where if you try to go at it alone and don't build those partnerships, you run the risk of not being here in a little while. And I think those are things that themes I've heard through our different conversations with different professionals.
Well, let me add to that. I completely agree with what you both said there. And I'll tell you, and I hope other firms and businesses are looking at it the same way as this, but everybody in my firm, I give them a standing order that we are not going to try or not going to capitalize financially on this situation. And my view of it, and I can tell you as a business owner and overseeing and managing employees, it's difficult. It's tough and challenging times for all of us. But I happen to kind of thrive, or our business, we're most needed probably when there are crises. And my view of this, and this is what I've told all of my attorneys, is we're not here to capitalize on this financially. What we're going to do is we are going to be more available, working around the clock more than ever. Because I'll tell you, it's the long-term view is exactly what you said, Chris, is if you will help people through these difficult times, help them salvage, help them save what they've got, you will have the most loyal friends and clients for the rest of your life. And so I really do hope that's kind of the approach that people in this community are taking.
And Jason, you mentioned you live in Frisco, your business in Frisco, but to take it up another notch, you've recently acquired a brand new building, and in the middle of all this, you're looking to be relocating, aren't you? How is this impacting you in terms of those plans and construction and redoing the office, et cetera?
You talk about challenges all around. Yes, we recently, clearly I could not forecast this all happening. We recently bought a building in downtown Frisco, the old Voyager insurance building, right down near the chamber, actually. And we are in the process of renovating that and moving there from our offices in Hall Office Park. It's challenging. It certainly has not sped the process along at this point. But that said, I am always counting on a rainy day at some point. This may be a rainy month, but we are looking forward more than ever to getting moved in down there.
Very good. I alluded to earlier that, 2-3 weeks ago, I didn't know Zoom or Microsoft Teams, all this other software. We started out recording these sessions and putting them out and building a library. As we're learning new technology, we're also looking to change what we're doing. And so I want the two of you to really touch upon some changes that we're moving to either late this week or for sure next week. Jason, with the webinar that you're looking to do, and then Chris, we're also looking to put together a webinar, both of which will have the ability to ask questions, Q&A, have people join in live. We're looking to bring the U.S. Chamber in to talk about the CARES Act and how it impacts business. So, Chris, you want to talk a little bit about that, and then we'll wrap up with Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're working on our plans. We're in our planning stages, so we're getting it all together. But hopefully by the end of this week, early next week, we'll have links available for everybody to go online and register and join us for our webinars. We'll have panel discussions to really dive into some of this and to be a little bit more interactive than what we're able to do with these in this format. And so we're really looking to hear from you, hear from our business community, what your concerns are, and how we can better answer those questions when we have professionals like Jason on these calls. And so that's what we're going to be doing moving forward. And like we said, into this week, early next week, we'll have something together.
Jason, you were gracious enough to go ahead and be willing to share a webinar that you've done and kind of take information. Tell us a little bit more about that. And again, thank you for not only participating here today, but offering to do that and work with our business community.
Absolutely, my pleasure. First thing I'll mention is I think we distributed an outline and kind of summary of all of the current legislation, and this is a daily ongoing updating project as it continues to come out. But we've distributed that, and so my hope is the chamber can make that available to anybody who wants it. And it really, I think it's a good issue spotter for a lot of businesses out there to see what kind of relief may be available. And then we're going to put together and do a webinar, which will really go into kind of in a little more detail all of the tax and business relief provisions that are out there as a result of the CARES Act and the other legislation. And so that will include the individual rebates, the easing of the ability to take distributions or loans from retirement programs, charitable contribution changes, but it will also include the various payroll tax credits and delays that have been implemented, as well as a number of very significant amendments to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, the last major tax reform act, which really rolled back some of the more restrictive provisions. And the upshot there is that Congress was trying to make it feasible or possible for businesses to go back and file amended returns over the last few years to see an immediate cash infusion from tax refunds.
That's great. And as I'm sitting here thinking about it and looking back, if you will, at about, I guess, 3 weeks now that we've kind of been in this, the first week was sort of, okay, it looks like we're going to have to be working remotely, at least many of us. How do we adjust to that? Last week, it was what's happening in Washington and getting a deal approved. And this week, as we go forward, we're trying to, the first thing we want to do is just get basic information out to people so that they knew that there were some options out there. Don't go making quick, rash decisions. And now as we move forward toward the end of this week, and for sure next week, we're going to be going into a lot more detail on each of these issues and really helping our businesses, in some cases, step by step, walking through the process so that they can know what's best for them and going from that. So any final wrapping up comments from either of you, Chris? Anything to add?
I just want to say thank you to Jason for joining us today. I know he's quite busy these days, and I know your time is valuable, so we appreciate you joining us and being a part of this conversation. And I look forward to working with you moving forward on webinars and everything else that we can do. And we do have that resource that you sent us, and we will try our best to keep it updated as you update it daily, as you stated, to keep that updated on our website as well. There's just so much going on that we're doing our best to keep up with all of it. So we appreciate you sharing some of those resources with us.
And Jason,
thank you all, and thank you for having me. I appreciate being a part of it.
Absolutely. And I would just ask everybody that's viewing any of these, videos that we're doing, or do we call them videos, these Zoom meetings, these library information that we have? Yes. We just urge everybody, share them with people, let people know we have resources out there. Check out the resource page. Let us know what you want to hear about. And as we stated earlier, be sure if you don't really know what you're doing, or if you've got questions, or just to verify what you're thinking, please reach out to professionals, people in the community that can help you. If you've got a pretty good idea, just bounce it off of them. Make certain that everybody's on the same page. If you don't have any idea, make certain that you find somebody out there. These are too critical at times and too important decisions to go in there and either say, I don't understand it all, I'm just not going to deal with it, or to go in and make an improper decision. So please reach out, get that information. We will be getting more information to you. We'll keep you posted on Jason's webinar, as well as the U.S. Chamber and others that we're looking to put together. And just stay strong, everybody, and be safe. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Chris. We'll talk to you guys next time.